Hello, creepers. Before we dive in, hit like, subscribe, and drop in the comments the worst place you can imagine during a zombie outbreak. Now let's get to it. The sea had been cruel to us for weeks. Storms battered the ship, rations spoiled, and men grew restless with hunger, gnawing at their bellies. When we finally sighted land, a jewel of green rising from the endless blue, it felt as though God himself had granted us mercy. The island looked like paradise. White sands shone in the sun, palms swayed gently in the breeze, bright birds wheeled overhead. To men who had known nothing but salt water and suffering, it was heaven. The captain promised rest, rum, and women. We dropped anchor and rowed ashore, laughing like fools. The sand burned hot underfoot, but no one cared. The smell of fruit drifted from the trees. Bananas, coconuts, mangoes, sweetness that made our mouths water. Yet, even as the men shouted with joy, I felt unease. The beach was quiet, too quiet. No drums from the village, no chatter of traders, no laughter of children. I had visited enough islands to know the sounds of life. Here, the silence pressed in, thick and heavy. We marched inland and found a small settlement near the cove. Spanish-built huts, rough and sun-baked. The place seemed half empty. A few villagers lingered, eyes hollow, faces drawn. They watched us with fear instead of anger. When the captain asked for drink, they gave it. When the men asked for women, they refused. One old woman spat at us and muttered in broken words. Sickness, jungle, sickness, death walk at night. The crew roared with laughter. Island curses, they mocked. Old women's tales. But her words clung to me like burrs. We carried on to the tavern, a low-roofed hut stinking of rum. The men drank deep. They sang, shouted, gambled, and fought. A fiddler scraped out a tune while tankards slammed against the table. It was the life we always chased, a night of flesh and fire before the gallows found us. Still, I could not shake the feeling that something was wrong. As I stepped outside for air, I caught sight of the shoreline. A carcass lay half buried in the sand, ribs jutting from its belly. Not a fish, not a pig. A horse. Skin stripped to bone, the head twisted at a sick angle. Seabirds circled above, but would not land to feed. The wind shifted, and I smelled it then. Rot. Not the sour stench of death at sea, but something heavier, like iron and spoiled meat mixed together. It came from inland, carried on the breeze. I returned to the tavern and told the captain. He laughed in my face, rum spilling down his beard. Your gut's gone soft, lad. This is paradise. Drink while you can. The men cheered him on, but I noticed others staring at their mugs in silence, eyes clouded with the same unease I felt. Later that night, a fight broke out in the street. 2 of our men had cornered a villager who tried to leave the tavern. In the struggle, his sleeve tore, and I saw his arm. The flesh was pocked with dark sores, oozing black. He struck at them with desperate strength, teeth bared in rage. It took 3 men to hold him down. His cries echoed, not words but guttural sounds, low and broken. They bound him and dragged him to the edge of the village. The captain cursed and ordered him left there, claiming he was mad with fever. We returned to the tavern, but the song had died. Men still drank, yet their laughter was hollow, their eyes darting to the shadows outside. Even the fiddler played slow, mournful notes. I lay awake on the dirt floor that night, the stench of rot drifting in through the shutters. My hand never left the hilt of my cutlass. The island looked like heaven, but something inside me whispered the truth. This place was cursed, and come morning, we would learn just how deep the curse went. The night dragged on with rum and dice, though the laughter never truly returned. Men pretended to be merry, but their eyes betrayed them. The villagers had shuttered their huts, and not a soul dared walk the streets. Only the sound of waves and the fiddler's tired bow filled the air. I could not sleep. My cutlass lay across my chest as I listened to the tavern creak and groan in the night breeze. Then came the scream. It cut through the dark like steel across bone. The tavern doors burst open, and one of our own stumbled inside. His shirt was torn, soaked through with blood. His face was pale as death, eyes wide with terror. Bites covered his arms and shoulder, ragged chunks torn away as if by teeth. He gasped for air, spitting red on the floorboards. "The dead," he rasped. "The dead walk in the jungle." The room went silent. Dice froze in mid-roll, tankards hung in trembling hands. Then, as if on cue, the man convulsed and collapsed, his body twitching. The captain barked orders to fetch the surgeon, but it was too late. The man's chest rattled, then stilled. Some of the crew crossed themselves. Others muttered curses. Before we could move his body, he stirred. His chest heaved once more. Eyes snapped open, clouded and grey. With a guttural snarl, he lunged, teeth snapping at the nearest man's throat. The bite landed before we could react. Blood sprayed across the tavern wall. Panic erupted. Tables overturned as men scrambled, pistols fired, smoke choking the air. The shot tore through his skull, yet he barely faltered, staggering forward until another blade drove deep into his chest. Even then he fought, snarling, clawing, until his head was severed clean by a cutlass swing. Silence returned, broken only by the gurgling of the bitten man writhing on the floor. He clutched at his neck, blood spilling through his fingers, his eyes pleading for mercy. No one dared touch him. Then came more screams, this time from outside. We rushed to the door and saw fire rising near the village huts. Shadows staggered from the tree line, figures lurching into the torchlight. At first I thought them drunkards, until I saw their jaws unhinged, their flesh ragged, their eyes pale and dead. The villagers fled in every direction, shrieking. The creatures moved with unnatural hunger, tearing into them with teeth and nails. Limbs were ripped from bodies. Bellies were split open. The night filled with a chorus of agony. The captain bellowed for us to hold the line. Muskets roared, smoke clouds billowing. But for every corpse that fell, more came stumbling from the dark. The air stank of powder and rot. My pistol misfired, the damp powder useless. I drew steel instead, the cutlass heavy in my hand. One of the creatures lunged at me, its mouth a gaping ruin. I swung with all my strength, cleaving through its skull. Black blood sprayed across my face. The body twitched, clawing at my leg, even as its head split open. I kicked it away, heart hammering like a drum. Around me, chaos consumed everything. Pirates screamed as their throats were torn out. Villagers were dragged into the dirt, their cries cut short with sickening crunches. The fiddler who had played only hours before was ripped apart in the street. His bow hand gnawed to bone. The captain fought like a demon, pistol in one hand, cutlass in the other, shouting curses as he hacked down the dead. But the tide could not be turned. The creatures swarmed too fast. Too many. Our line broke. Men fled in every direction, tripping over bodies, shoving each other aside in desperation. I saw the captain fall then. A corpse seized him from behind. jaws clamping onto his shoulder. He roared and drove steel through its gut, but 3 more dragged him down. He disappeared beneath gnashing teeth and clawing hands. His screams did not last long. Fire spread across the thatched roofs, smoke choking the night sky. The Paradise Island was no more. It was a battlefield, a slaughterhouse. I ran, cutlass slick with blood, my lungs burning. The moans of the dead followed close behind. As I stumbled through the village outskirts, I looked back once. The tavern where we had sung and drank only hours ago now burned like a beacon. Figures writhed in its glow, feasting on the fallen. The music, the laughter, the promise of rest, all of it gone, replaced by the endless screams of the dying. That was the moment I knew. This was no sickness, no curse of old women's tales. Death itself had risen, and it hungered for the living. And paradise had become hell. I fled into the jungle with only the glow of burning huts to guide me. Behind me, the screams of my crew and the villagers blended with the guttural moans of the dead. The night was alive with terror. Branches whipped at my face as I ran, my cutlass slick in my grip. Each step carried me farther from the village, yet the cries still echoed in my ears. At last I stumbled into a clearing where a handful of survivors gathered. 3 of my crew, wide-eyed and bloodied. A boy from the village, clutching a wooden spear, and a woman, perhaps his mother, dragging him close. Their faces told the same story as mine. We had seen death walk. One of my men, Briggs, spat into the dirt. "We make for the ship. Get to the docks, set sail, and leave this cursed place behind." His voice shook, though he tried to sound bold. Another, Morales, shook his head. "The docks are gone." I saw the fire, powder stores blew sky high. Ships are naught but burning wrecks. His eyes darted to the trees as distant moans carried on the wind. "If we go back, we die." The woman whispered of a mission deeper inland, built of stone, where priests and soldiers once lived. If walls still stand, perhaps safety lies there. The choice tore at us. Return to the sea and face fire and ruin, or march into the jungle where shadows shifted and the air reeked of rot. In the end, the sea had betrayed us already. We turned inland. The jungle swallowed us whole. The canopy blotted out the moon, and every step cracked twigs like breaking bones. The boy whimpered, his mother clutching him tight. Briggs cursed him to silence, but the sound of fear clung heavier than the heat. Sweat dripped from my brow, the salt stinging my eyes. We moved in silence until a groan rose from the brush. A figure staggered into view, clothes shredded, face caked with blood. At first I thought him another survivor, until he turned his head and I saw the empty gaze, the broken jaw hanging loose. Briggs fired before I could stop him. The shot echoed like thunder, and the body fell twitching. Then came the answer. Moans, dozens of them, carried through the trees. Shadows moved all around us. "Run!" I shouted, and we did. The boy cried out as something grabbed for him, but I swung my cutlass and split its skull. Hot blood sprayed across my arms, and the stench made me gag. I pushed him forward, my heart pounding like a drum. We burst into another clearing, panting, the cries of the dead fading for now. Morales leaned on a tree, pale and trembling. His sleeve was torn, blood seeping through the cloth. I grabbed his arm and pulled it back. The bite was clear, jagged teeth marks deep in the flesh. Briggs swore and raised his pistol. Morales begged, his voice cracking. "Please, I can fight. Don't leave me to die here." The woman pulled her son close, shielding his eyes. Briggs' hand shook as he cocked the hammer. I caught his wrist. "Not now. Not yet. We need every blade." He spat in my face. "You've gone soft." He's dead already, but he lowered the pistol. We pressed on, though every step felt heavier. The boy's eyes lingered on Morales, fear written plain across his young face. I knew what he was thinking. I knew it too. It was only a matter of time before Morales turned, just like the others. By dawn's first light, we saw the outline of stone rising above the tree line. The mission. Its walls stood cracked and blackened by fire, but still solid. Hope sparked in our chests, faint, but real. Perhaps behind those walls we would find respite. Perhaps behind those walls we would last the day. But as we drew closer, I noticed the trees around the mission hung with shapes. Corpses, bound with rope, swaying in the breeze. Their faces were eaten down to bone, their jaws stretched in eternal screams. The boy whimpered. Briggs cursed. Morales groaned with fever. I tightened my grip on my cutlass and pressed forward. The mission might hold safety, or it might hold something far worse. The stone mission loomed over us like a grave marker. Its walls, once white, were now scorched black in places, patched with wooden beams and crude barricades. Smoke stains streaked up from arrow slits, and the gates sagged beneath makeshift reinforcements of iron and chain. It was no sanctuary of God. It was a fortress of desperation. We approached with caution, blades drawn. The corpses strung up around the clearing, swung gently in the morning breeze, their eyeless sockets staring down at us. A warning to the living. Whether it was meant for the dead or the desperate, I could not say. A shout rang from the wall. Men peered down, muskets aimed. For a breath, I thought they would shoot us where we stood. But the woman raised her voice. She spoke in Spanish, quick and pleading. At last, the gates groaned open just enough to let us slip inside before clanging shut again. The air within reeked of sweat, smoke, and sickness. Dozens huddled together, villagers, sailors, a handful of soldiers. Eyes sunken, faces gaunt. They looked at us with suspicion. In the courtyard's center, a priest muttered prayers beside a small altar, his hands shaking. A soldier with a scarred cheek stepped forward. "No more mouths to feed," he growled. The woman argued back in her tongue. The soldier spat, but at last waved us through. We sank against the wall, too weary to speak. My throat burned with thirst. A jug of water passed between us, warm and sour. But it was life all the same. Morales leaned heavy on me. His skin was pale, his eyes fever bright. Sweat poured from his brow. The others watched him closely, their stares sharp as knives. They knew what I tried to deny. That night, the priest came to us. His face was grey with exhaustion, his voice a rasp. "The sickness spreads quick," he said. "Fever, then madness, then the hunger." He made the sign of the cross. "God tests us," Briggs sneered. "God had nothing to do with this. This is hell, plain and simple." The priest's eyes shifted to Morales, who sat trembling in the corner. "If he stays, all of you die." I bristled. "He's one of us. He can fight." The priest's voice hardened. "He will turn, and when he does, it will be too late." The courtyard fell silent. All eyes were on us. Briggs's hand rested on the butt of his pistol. Morales clutched my arm like a drowning man, whispering, "Please, brother, don't let them kill me." The boy hid behind his mother, peeking out with wide, terrified eyes. The moment stretched long as a noose. My heart hammered against my ribs. I wanted to deny it, to believe that Morales could resist the fate I had seen take so many. But deep inside, I knew the truth. His body jerked then, a low growl bubbling from his throat. His fingers curled into claws as his head snapped toward me, eyes glazed and grey. Briggs was faster than thought. The pistol cracked, smoke filling the courtyard. Morales collapsed against me, dead before he hit the dirt. The echo lingered. No one spoke. The boy buried his face in his mother's dress. I could not move, could not breathe, staring at the lifeless body of a man who had once shared my deck, my battles, my bread. Briggs reloaded slow, his face like stone. "Better now than later," he muttered. I wanted to strike him. I wanted to shout that he had been too quick, too eager. But in my heart, I knew he was right. That night, I sat apart from the others, my cutlass across my knees. The courtyard whispered with prayers and sobs. I thought of the sea, of the endless horizon where death had always stalked us in storms, cannon fire and rope. Yet none of that compared to this. This was not a fight against kings or navies. This was the world itself turning against the living. Sleep did not come. Each moan outside the walls rattled my bones. Each cough inside the courtyard reminded me of how fragile we were. And when I closed my eyes, all I saw was Morales's face, his hand clutching mine, his plea echoing in my ears. The island had already taken much from me, but that night I understood it would demand far more before it was done. The mission walls gave us a night's shelter, nothing more. By dawn, the truth was clear. There was no salvation here. The food was nearly gone, the water fouled. The people huddled in fear, listening to the endless moans outside the gates. We were not safe. We were trapped, waiting to die. Briggs slammed his fist against the wall. "We rot here, or we fight through. Those are the choices." The woman spoke of a hidden cove on the far side of the island, a place where smugglers once kept ships away from the eyes of the Spanish crown. If any vessel remained, it was our only chance. The plan was madness, a trek across an island swarming with the dead. Yet sitting idle meant certain death. I gripped my cutlass and nodded. Better to die with steel in hand than starve behind stone. We gathered what little we could, a few pistols, half a pouch of powder, and blades dulled from overuse. The priest tried to stop us, but his words were hollow. In the end, even he turned his eyes away as the gates creaked open and we slipped into the jungle once more. The moans met us instantly, echoing from every side. Figures lurched between the trees, drawn by the sound of the gate. Briggs fired the first shot, dropping one in the dirt. The crack of the pistol was a curse. The forest awoke in reply. Shadows moved. The horde was coming. We ran, hacking through brush, stumbling over roots, sweat pouring down our faces. The boy tripped, crying out, and I hauled him up by the arm. His mother kept pace beside me, her eyes wild. Behind us, the moans grew louder. We burst into the ruins of an old sugar mill, its stone walls crumbling, iron cauldrons rusting in the sun. For a heartbeat, I thought it empty. Then the dead poured from the shadows, sailors in rags, villagers with bellies torn open, their mouths smeared black with blood. Briggs roared and swung his cutlass, splitting one from shoulder to chest. I fired my pistol into another's skull, the powder burning my hand. The woman drove her spear through a corpse's throat, pinning it against the wall. The boy screamed as a clawed hand snatched at his ankle. I hacked it clean, the body writhing headless in the dirt. There was no time to breathe. More came. Always more. We fought our way through, steel ringing against bone, the air filled with the stench of rot and powder smoke. My arms ached. My chest burned. Yet still I swung, every blow driven by terror. By the time we stumbled out the far side of the mill, our blades dripped black. Briggs was bleeding from a gash in his leg. The woman's hands shook so badly she could barely hold her spear. The boy clung to me, his face pale with shock. We pressed on. The jungle thickened, vines clutching at our clothes like grasping fingers. Each step forward was bought with sweat and blood. At every turn, they hunted us. From caves, from swamps, from the trees themselves, the dead came crawling, shambling, lunging. In a shallow marsh, the ground sucked at our boots as corpses rose from the muck, their skin bloated and pale. They dragged at our legs, their jaws snapping inches from our flesh. Briggs drove his blade down again and again, cursing as mud and gore splattered his face. I seized the boy and waded through, the water red around my knees. We lost 2 more there, soldiers from the mission who had followed in hope of escape. One was pulled under, his scream cut short with a gurgle. The other slipped and vanished beneath a swarm of grasping hands. Their cries chased us long after we had broken free. The sun climbed high, burning above the canopy, but the heat brought no comfort. Our throats were raw, our limbs heavy. Each sound, a rustling branch, a distant groan, sent our hearts racing. At last, as evening fell, we climbed a ridge and looked down. Beyond the trees stretched the cove. The sea shimmered gold in the dying light. And there, moored against the rocks, sat a ship, a brigantine, battered but afloat, its sails furled. For the first time in days, hope stirred in my chest. Salvation was before us, but so was hell. The beach below crawled with the dead, dozens, perhaps hundreds, shuffling between the rocks, their pale bodies lit by the last light of the sun. The cove was no safe haven. It was a graveyard. Briggs spat into the dirt. Figures. Nothing comes easy. The woman clutched her son to her chest. Her eyes brimmed with tears, yet there was fire in them still. That ship is the only way off this island. She was right. But looking down at the horde, I knew what it meant. To reach the ship, we would have to carve a path through the very heart of the nightmare. I gripped my cutlass tighter, the leather of the hilt worn smooth beneath my palm. My arms trembled with exhaustion, but my heart burned with grim resolve. We had come too far to falter now. The jungle had tested us. The island had bled us dry. But the worst was yet to come. The cove waited, and it promised nothing but death. The sight of the brigantine lit a fire in us, though it flickered against the shadow of what lay between. The cove stretched wide and broken, jagged rocks jutting like teeth, and upon them staggered the dead. Their groans rose with the tide, a chorus that chilled the blood. We crouched low upon the ridge, watching them. The boy clutched my arm, trembling so hard I could feel his bones rattle. His mother whispered prayers in Spanish, her lips cracked from thirst. Briggs cleaned his blade against his trousers, his jaw tight, his leg wound still bleeding through the cloth. "That ship is our salvation," he said. "But we'll need a plan, else we're meat for the horde." The woman shook her head. "No plan but forward. Darkness comes soon. If we wait, we are lost." She was right. The sun had already dipped low, its last fire burning across the waves. Night would bring no safety. The dead moved as well in shadow as in light. We spoke little after that. There was nothing more to say. Each of us knew what was required. We would fight through, or we would die upon the sand. We descended from the ridge, quiet as shadows. The closer we crept, the worse the stench became, rot thick in the air, mixed with the salt of the sea. The groans grew louder, shapes shifted in the twilight, pale and broken, staggering in restless hunger. At the edge of the tree line, I turned to the others. My voice was low, rough with dust. Keep close. Do not falter. If one of us falls, do not stop. The boy's mother tightened her grip on him. Briggs gave a short nod. His eyes burned with a defiance I had never seen before. We broke from the brush and charged. The dead turned at once, their moans rising like a wave. They lurched toward us, arms outstretched, jaws clacking. I met the first with a cutlass swing that split its skull clean through. Briggs fired his pistol, the crack echoing across the cove. One fell, but the shot drew more, their heads snapping toward the sound. We hacked, we slashed, we pushed forward. The boy stayed between us, his small form shielded by steel and fury. His mother drove her spear into bellies and throats, her face set like stone. Briggs fought like a man already damned, roaring with each blow, his blade dripping black. But for every corpse we struck down, 2 more closed in. They spilled from the rocks, from the shallows, from the ruined huts near the cove. The sand turned slick beneath our boots, red and black mixing in the tide. I lost count of how many I killed. My arms burned, my chest heaved, and still I swung, the weight of survival driving each stroke. The boy's cries rang in my ears, sharp and terrified, keeping me moving when my body begged to fall. At last, through the haze of smoke and blood, I saw the brigantine, its hull scarred, its sails torn, but still afloat. The gangplank hung broken, but ropes dangled down the side. It was within reach. Briggs shouted, his voice hoarse. "To the water! Move!" We fought through the last line of corpses, stumbling into the surf. Waves crashed around us, foaming red with blood. I seized the boy and lifted him to the rope. "Climb!" I roared. His small hands gripped tight, hauling himself upward as his mother followed. Briggs waded beside me, striking down another corpse with a roar. His strength was failing. Blood poured from his leg wound, his steps faltering. I grabbed his arm, dragging him toward the ship. But the dead closed in behind us, their groans rising higher, louder, hungrier. The tide itself seemed to carry them toward us. We had reached the brink. Safety hung just above, salvation swaying in the ropes. But to seize it, we would have to endure one final storm of claws and teeth. The ship was within reach, hope itself dangled before our eyes, and hell followed at our heels. The surf crashed against my chest as I dragged Briggs through the water. His leg was torn, his blood leaving a red trail behind us, a beacon for the dead. Their groans rose over the waves, a storm of hunger at our backs. The boy and his mother clung to the rope, climbing higher with desperate strength. Above, the brigantine loomed like salvation carved in wood and sail. "Go!" Briggs bellowed, shoving me toward the ship. His face was pale, his eyes burning with fever. "Leave me, damn you! Save the boy!" I clenched my jaw and pulled harder. "Not yet, you bastard!" Not yet. The nearest corpse lunged, teeth snapping. I swung my cutlass and split its jaw clean off. Another clambered over the rocks, arms stretched wide. The sea was alive with them, their bodies tumbling in the waves, their hands clawing toward us. We reached the side of the ship. The boy was nearly at the top, his small form vanishing over the railing. His mother was just below, climbing slow but steady. "Up!" I shouted to Briggs. I pushed him to the rope, but his arms shook, slick with blood. He managed only a few feet before slipping, falling back into the surf. The dead swarmed closer, their moans like thunder. I planted myself between Briggs and the tide, swinging with all I had left. My blade cut through skulls, arms, throats, spraying black rot into the air. Still they came, relentless, unending. "Climb, damn you!" I roared again. Briggs seized the rope once more, teeth bared in agony, hauling himself upward inch by inch. I followed, my hands raw on the rope, my cutlass clenched in my teeth. Below, the dead clawed at the hull, some slamming their bodies against the wood in blind hunger. Their fingers scraped, their mouths gnashed, but the sea dragged them back again and again. The woman reached the deck, pulling her son into her arms. She turned and leaned down, reaching for Briggs. His hand caught hers, and with a final heave, he collapsed onto the planks. I hauled myself up last, rolling onto the deck as the ship swayed beneath us. My chest burned, my muscles screamed, but we were aboard, alive, for now. The deck was empty, no crew, no captain, only silence broken by the groans below. The sails were tattered, the rigging frayed, but the wheel still stood, and the ship still floated. "We can sail her," I said, my voice ragged. "She'll carry us away." Briggs laughed, a harsh, broken sound. He lay on his back, blood pooling beneath him. "If she don't sink first. But better than rotting here." The woman cradled her son, whispering to him in soft tones, though her eyes never left the sea. The boy shook in her arms, silent, his face pale as bone. We moved quick. The woman and I cut the ropes, letting the gangplank fall away to keep the dead from climbing aboard. I set the sails as best I could, though my hands trembled. The wind caught them, weak but steady, and the brigantine drifted from the cove. The dead surged against the shore, their cries rising higher as we pulled away. Some stumbled into the surf, dragged down by the tide. Others clung to rocks, their jaws snapping in fury. The island grew smaller behind us, its paradise drowned in blood. But peace did not follow. Briggs grew worse by the hour. His wound festered, the flesh turning black. His breath came ragged, his skin clammy. I had seen such sickness before, and never had it ended well. He called me to his side as the moon climbed high. "You know what this means," he rasped, eyes burning in the dark. "I'll not be one of them. Promise me." The boy's mother turned away, holding her child tight. I gripped Briggs's hand, my throat thick. I promise." His grip weakened. His eyes dimmed. "Get them to safety. That's all that matters." His hand slipped from mine and his chest fell still. I sat there a long while, the waves lapping against the hull, the stars wheeling above. At last, I rose. Briggs had kept us alive, and I would not dishonor him now. I carried his body to the stern. The boy watched, silent, his eyes wide with a sorrow too old for his years. His mother whispered a prayer, her voice soft as the wind. I let Briggs slip into the sea. The waves took him, carrying him into the dark. The ship sailed on, creaking in the night. Ahead lay only open water, and perhaps some distant shore. Behind us, the island burned in my memory. The laughter that had once filled its shores, now drowned in screams. We were alive, but the world had changed. The sea was no longer freedom. It was a graveyard, endless and waiting. Still, I gripped the wheel, my jaw set. "We sail east," I told them. "We'll find land, We'll find others." The boy clung to his mother, his small face turned toward the stars. She looked to me, her eyes hollow but fierce. "And if there are none?" I stared at the horizon, where sea met sky in blackness. "Then we make our own fate." The ship cut through the waves, carrying us into a future unknown. Escape or die, we had chosen escape, but the dead would not rest forever. The sea was calm by morning, though no peace stirred in me. The brigantine drifted steady, her sails catching what little wind the dawn offered. Salt stung my lips, and the sun rose over a horizon that promised nothing but distance. The boy slept at last, curled against his mother, his small frame wrapped in her arms. She had not closed her eyes all night. Her gaze was fixed on the waves, as if the dead might rise straight out of the depths to claim us. I stood at the wheel, my body numb with exhaustion. Every sound of the sea brought memory, screams from the village, the groans of the horde, Briggs' final breath. His loss weighed heavier than the anchor we had left behind. I thought of what we had escaped and what waited ahead. The boy had lost his father, the woman her home, Briggs, his life. And me. I had lost the illusion that freedom lay in the horizon. The ocean was no escape. The dead had claimed the land. And soon, I feared, they would claim the sea. By midday, clouds gathered. The wind shifted, carrying with it a smell I could not mistake. Rot, faint but sharp, carried across the waves. My grip tightened on the wheel. The woman noticed it too. She drew her son closer, whispering words of comfort. But her eyes met mine, and in them, I saw the same dread. Not long after, the boy pointed across the water. "There!" At first I thought it was a trick of the light, a mirage cast by the sun. But as we drew nearer, the truth revealed itself. Another ship drifted upon the waves, her sails in tatters, her hull scarred. No flag flew from her mast. We circled her slowly, the brigantine groaning as it cut through the swell. Bodies littered her deck, unmoving, their forms twisted in death. Yet even from a distance, I felt unease crawl across my skin. The boy's mother whispered, "Perhaps survivors." But I knew better. The smell was stronger now, filling my lungs, sinking into my skin. I had seen this before. We passed close enough to glimpse their faces. Some were nothing but skull and rot. Others still moved. Heads turned slowly, jaws opening in silent hunger. Their eyes fixed upon us, unblinking. The boy whimpered, burying his face against his mother's side. She held him tight, her own breath quick and shallow. I turned the wheel hard, steering us away. The dead upon the derelict ship shuffled to the rails, arms stretching out across the water, their groans rising into the wind. They watched us drift past, their hunger unbroken by sea or storm. When the distance widened, the boy's mother asked the question that weighed on us all. "Is there anywhere left?" I looked to the horizon, where the sky darkened with storm clouds. My voice was low, rough. "I don't know." The brigantine sailed on, small against the endless sea. Behind us, the derelict ship drifted with its cargo of death, carried by the same wind that bore us forward. The boy lifted his head, his voice soft but clear. "They're everywhere, aren't they?" I could not answer. The sea stretched out before us, vast and merciless. Somewhere beyond the horizon, hope might linger, or perhaps only more death. But one truth gnawed at me, a thought I could not silence. If the plague had reached this island, and ships carried the dead upon the open water, then no shore was safe, and the ocean itself had become their graveyard. Or worse, their kingdom.